All right, Austin Rugby fans, we're back once again with Alex Reese. I'm Dustin Zaire. You're listening and watching the Austin Rugby podcast. Man, it's been an exciting week. But first, we got to talk about, Alex, how cold is it outside?
It is, I think, 24 today, and
24.
I think on Sunday or maybe on Monday it was 74. So
yeah, right.
nice
So
drop.
It's ridiculous. And yeah, for those of you who aren't familiar, this is not common for Austin. It's too cold. The fact that they're predicting potentially 3 inches of snow on Monday. Oh man, that's. Yeah, I've seen a lot of posts of people who are not from here that have been saying, I moved to Austin, right?
Right, yeah, I was going to say, I was just about to comment that this is not why everyone and their mother is trying to move to Austin.
Yeah, exactly. Well, this is a rugby podcast. It's not a weather podcast, which probably wouldn't be that exciting of a podcast, I wouldn't think, but hey, you never know. But so let's get down to it, man. There's been so much going on this week in Austin rugby in the news. We're gonna do things a little bit different on this week's episode. We're gonna talk about all the things that are going on in the news. We'll take a break and then we'll come back and we'll talk about some the loose forwards and the exciting talent that we have there, and then we'll sit down with our guests this week. Only one guest this week, but that's okay because there's so much to talk about. If you've been paying attention to the news or anything at Austin, you know that there was a big announcement this week. Actually, there's like 3 big announcements, and one was a signing. But maybe we'll wait and save that for another time since it's a back and not a forward. But really excited to have him come and join us. But the first one is the jersey announcement for Austin. And that is the sponsor for Austin, the front of the jersey sponsor, the what do they call it? I'm trying to get the exact word here. The founding partner is a founding partner, and that's Ascension Seton Health, which is a huge organization here in Austin. Alex, I don't know about you, but that's pretty exciting. We haven't had a front of the jersey sponsor at all for Austin. What do you think that's going to do to just kind of the overall recognition of the team in town?
Well, I think just in general, having some sort of sponsor partnership is always going to be a positive. Like Dustin, you've worked with the team since they were the elite. It's difficult to land sponsorships. It's not an easy thing, especially with a sport that's new like rugby to professionalism. But also, I don't know, like the last time my girlfriend had to go in for a operation, pretty serious operation. We went to Ascension Seton, so it's a very big name brand here in Austin.
In Texas too, like Seton.
Yeah, and a lot of I was born at St. David's Hospital here in Austin, but like a ton of people in Austin can tie their roots directly to Seton because that's where they were birthed. So I think a lot of people are familiar with Seton, and I think that's just a good way to get more eyes on the gilgronis.
Yeah, I think that obviously being a founding partner, Ascension Seton is a medical partner, right? It's not just the they're going to get the name brand recognition on the front of the jersey, which is great, but it's a medical partner. You're getting I'm reading kind of part of the press release here, and you're getting not only that name, you're getting athletic trainers, sports scientists, sports medicine physician, orthopedists, and like all kinds of people are going to be overseeing the team. Like this partnership turns Austin into that elite level professional style, like what you would associate a pro football team with, like a partnership with this. And then they get access to the performance center, for Ascension Seton, which is something completely new and pretty exciting as well.
You mentioned like that elite professionalism, and it's interesting you say that because I won't mention his name just for the sake of kind of anonymity, but there was a former Austin player who now plays with another team in the MLR, and he helped coach us at the Huns this past fall. And I asked him, like, how do you feel about playing at your current team versus, Austin? And he his like big takeaway was that he loves the level of professionalism that the Austin team is showing, and he said his club is great with the grassroots and growing the game and attracting fans. But he said that like the level of professionalism that the Gilgronis are bringing to the league is, he said, is very groundbreaking. Yeah. And I think like this partnering with like a very, very high level medical facility that offers a huge range of service from top to bottom, I think is just another step that I think other teams in the league are going to follow. And like the league is the league because of the players.
Yeah.
And you need them to be healthy. So I think that it's just a phenomenal partnership.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that one of the big things that I've heard is there are other things, obviously the care is going to be important to maintaining, the athletes at their peak condition. And so to have more than just, one or two athletic trainers helping out from time to time, not giving any, not putting anything away from previous seasons and previous trainers and health professionals that have been there with the team, but now you're getting an army of health professionals. Basically, you're taking it so you could potentially get that one-on-one care, and that for me says so much more, because we as an organization have struggled with injuries in the past. Ben Mitchell, when he was here, man, played almost, you could tell like the whole season he was playing with an injury almost. And it, how do you recover from that? Of course that has to do with squad depth and stuff sometimes too, but still there are aspects of that really kind of scream need for better care. And this partnership, I think, gives it to us with this with Seton.
I think there's so many aspects to medical care, especially with the contact sport like rugby. There's I think almost most importantly, there's diagnosis, and then there's operation, and then there's rehab, and then even kind of outside of all that, there's preventative measures that professional medical people can really assist with. That I've heard it called prehab a lot of
for sure.
And I think, but most important I think is like getting the right diagnoses on players. Like I remember last year on the AGs, before they had a full staff of doctors, that it wasn't just all on one guy. It was like, you have this one trainer having to like diagnose 7 different guys after every practice. And it's tough. It's like in 5 minutes, he's got to try to like tell someone like, here's what's going on and this is what you need to do for it. And it's just overwhelming. But to have an entire squad able to look after the players is gonna go a very, very long way. I think to us having a longer and better season.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think more than just that, you talk about I came from a business standpoint. You go, okay, if I am an individual athlete and I want to go to this high performance center for Ascension Seton, and I want to meet, I need an orthopedic surgeon, I need a sports and rehabilitation, I need whatever it may be. How much would that cost me? And then multiply it times 30 something guys, and then multiply it times getting the top end of everything. You think about it from a financial standpoint and what that actually probably could, like the amount of money that is associated with it. Like that's a huge financial investment from Ascension Seton into the organization.
Which tells me that they are fully invested, which I think is
absolutely
cool. Like, when you're offering that much, which which costs you that much, like you're not gonna half-ass be in. Which I think is great for the AGs, because now you've got one of the biggest medical clinics in the state fully behind what we're doing here, and I think that's only going to be a positive.
For sure. And if you go back and watch the video that announced it, it was also great to see Sebastian de Chavez and Bryce Campbell, 2 former teammates at London Irish, we talked about last week, be the poster child or the poster boys for the jersey announcement with their masks on, being COVID safe.
Two former Dustin Zer interviewees.
Oh, well, one former and one this week. Technically former since I interviewed him yesterday. But yeah, exactly. So we've got two guys that, kind of showing off the jersey, which is great. But I think one of the most important parts of that video that came out was having Adam Bauman, I think is his name, who is the GM or vice president of the kind of business and sports aspect of Ascension Seton. He came on, he was like, yes, we're ready, we're excited, we can't wait to be in a stadium full of 5,000 fans, and when COVID's all done and blah blah blah, like all that, like he was excited, like he was ready to be a part of the organization. And I think that and this and the next thing we'll talk about here in a couple minutes, of tying in the AGs to the local Austin community and the businesses that are associated are going to be the main impact for growing the sport outside of the rugby fans that we already know, like outside of the Huns, Blacks, Valks organization, youth organization. That is the next big step for us. And I think it's something that what's that?
Is that 100%?
Yeah, and I think that's something that we, I look forward to saying, okay, how do we get linked up with Oracle and Facebook and, and literally every, Bumble for all that matter, like anybody really.
It kind of makes me wonder too, like, you've got a high level medical program associated now, or not even associated, directly involved with the AGs.
Yeah.
What sort of opportunities might that present for people that want to get into sports medicine?
Yeah, right.
Like kids growing up that maybe, went to med school at Baylor or went to med school in Austin or something. And it's like, I want to do sports medicine. If I can't, maybe I can't be a part of the Texas Longhorns medical staff, but there's another professional sports team in town, and this is the avenue I want to go. And it's just a way to attract more great talent to the medical side of professional rugby, which cannot be understated.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's amazing. And I think, obviously when you look through AG social media and everything, and there was a photo of Robbie, and he had the giant mat, like the Bane, what looked like the Bane mask. Yeah. And the whole thing strapped around his head, and they're like testing his VO2 max, and they're like, man, check it. It was incredible. Like,
I mean, what
I want to do that just to show how out of shape I am as, as an almost 40-year-old.
My question is, like, not only what other teams in the MLR are going down this avenue, how many teams in World Rugby period are, have brought in like this type of medical professionalism to their club, that outside of like the Premiership, the top 14 and Super Rugby and Pro 14. I mean,
I don't know.
As far as professional rugby, I'd be interested to know, like, who else is taking care of their players like this.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the national teams are probably going to do it for the most part. You would think, at least all tier 1 national teams. I would say, outside super rugby teams. I don't know. I mean, and the MLR. I mean, I'm sure there are organizations that are working together, but at least it's not that public as far as like a partnership like this.
I mean, if I'm a emerging or even seasoned professional rugby player, like, that's a huge attraction to me.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to be medically taken care of.
Yeah, exactly. I can the first jersey that I think of that has a sponsor on there is Seattle, and it's Krusteaz, and that's a pancake mix, and that's not exactly what I would associate rugby players with. Whatever. I mean, Krusteaz pancake mix is good, so nothing against them. So
mental, hey, it's happiness, and happiness is part of mental health.
Yeah, right. There you go. So, speaking of happiness, there are other happy things that are going on in Austin as far as the AGs are concerned. There was the secret post on Monday trying to guess which 3-time Grammy nominee was going to be opening up or performing at the AG's opener, and of course in Austin there are tons and tons of artists and Grammy artists. You got somebody said Willie Nelson. I was like, oh man, if Willie Nelson came to that'd be ridiculous. You'd sell out just because it said Willie Nelson. But there are lots of guys, and it turned out it was legendary. I say legendary because he's been around for a long time, but it's Paul Oakenfold. And so for those of you who don't know Paul's music, he is a DJ, dance, house, trance music. It's kind of like techno, if you will, if you go back into like the early 90s. But he's a huge artist. Like, he's an Englishman. He's British. He has just moved to Austin, but he is moving here, and he is opening the season up for us. Everybody's closing out the game. So after the game on March 20th, 21st, 20th.
Yeah, March 20th.
March 20th. We're getting closer to that 30 days that you and I said 2 weeks ago. But yeah, so March 20th, he's going to be playing. The great thing about that is they are actually partnering not only with he's partnering with the AGs to come and play, but they're working with the Austin Music Foundation. And for those of you who are not familiar with the local Austin scene, because of COVID, Austin is the live music capital of the world. It's been absolutely decimated. I've got friends who work in the music industry here, and there's no live music because, well, no bars are open, no one's playing, no one's going on tour. And so what they're doing is they're taking portions of the proceeds, and they're taking donations, and they're taking, different aspects of it and giving it to the Austin Music Foundation through Paul Oakenfold and the tickets that they're selling, and other things from what I hear, so that they can continue to work and give back to the community. Which, awesome, man. Music and rugby, it goes together like peanut butter and jelly, baby.
I think like one of the if not the biggest thing, one of the 2 or 3 biggest things that you think of when I think you think of Austin, especially for locals, is the live music scene. And for it to have had such a profoundly negative impact from COVID, it's honestly pretty amazing that the AGs are here to support that. And I think, say what people want, or jump to conclusions you want about the AGs and maybe like some of the branding or naming. I think everything they're doing is pretty awesome and very driven towards the Austin community. And I think this is just another thing that they are not just moving here from Australia and, and like starting rugby and trying to grow a big professional brand. They're also really learning and tapping into the culture of the city, and music is huge. Like, I can tell you,
massive.
Growing up, I'm not kidding. I think I had at least 10 friends growing up that were in bands, like in high school, middle school, high school, and still to this day playing in bands. And like, it's just kind of a heartbeat of the city. And for the AGs to kind of come in and recognize that and then support it is pretty amazing. And, I heard maybe some rumblings that Paul Oakenfold isn't the only guy that's going to be performing at our games.
Yeah. No, from what I understand, and so I'll answer that, and then I'll kind of follow up with a different point. Is what I understand is every match is going to have a different musical artist playing, and that's awesome. And obviously, there are groups that I'd like to see play out there. Gary Clark Jr., Black Pumas, there's some big name artists around there. But also, I'd love to give some credit, give some airtime and some stage time to some of the lesser known and up and coming artists in Austin who are there.
Billy King and the Bad.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. Is that one of your buddies' bands?
It's my cousin's boyfriend's band.
Boyfriend's second brother removed.
It's my cousin's boyfriend's band. Although I guess he's not part of the band anymore, but they rock.
Yeah, I've actually seen that name around town. So again, if you know the Austin scenes, you just know that all these names are out there, and it's everything from rock to blues to country to hip hop to punk. Everything is out there, and it's all in Austin. Which is why a lot of people move here from other places for that music. But yeah, I think it's great. I think you touched upon it a little bit, and you talked about like the AGs and what they're doing and how we're being perceived by the rest of, the MLR. The first couple seasons, and I want to say the first couple seasons, first season wasn't anything. I think a lot of the second season and the negativity that followed is what, how people still see Austin, or at least up until recently. They're like, oh, it's the team that was 0-16, and it's the team that blah 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 blah, and you had whatever people. I think that people still see that. What I don't think people see is the fact that they came in, they changed the name, they made it as a big hoopla, and people were like, oh, AG, Gilgronis. If you notice, we haven't really been calling them the Gilgronis much, right? It's kind of going the way of and I'm going to say this, and I'll throw this out there because I was talking with somebody about it. It's like, we're going the way of the Oakland Athletics. Nobody calls them the Oakland Athletics anymore. It's the Oakland A's, right? Yeah. So we've become we're the Austin AGs. And so if it's
I'll tell you this, I was there it was like 5:45 in the morning. It was before practice last season, right before the first game against the Arrows, and the ownership came in and spoke to us, like you said, like 6 in the morning.
Yeah.
And basically told us about how there was going to be a name change, ownership change, all this stuff. And it was like, we were like, whoa, that's like crazy. Yeah. Like the day that they told us that they were going to be called the Gilgronis, I think it was Matt Burgess.
Yeah.
Was the one that told us. And he said, he's like, look, it's kind of it's kind of a weird name, but we're going to be called the AGs.
Yeah,
we're not going to go by the Gilgronis. It's going to be the AGs.
Yeah,
and I was like,
it's a good Matt Burgess impersonation.
Was it? Okay. I put it in a little bit. Yeah. I went a little Kiwi on it. But,
you did go a bit Kiwi on him.
Yeah. But yeah, he said it's going to be the AGs. Like from day one, that's been the plan. Yeah. And it's like, it just irks me so much, the amount of people that get so hung up on it being the Gilgronis, and what a bad name that is. Now, it's like, it's like they say, oh, they're naming it after an alcoholic beverage. I'm like, no, I think they're naming an alcoholic beverage after the first professional rugby team here in Austin.
Yeah, because what came before the other? Like, it's actually the other way around. Like the beverage is being named after the team because the beverage hasn't even been created yet. So,
exactly.
But it's not a Giltini, which that's a whole other. That's a sidebar that we can talk forever. But here's the thing: you don't become a multi-billion-dollar company, and that's F45 and Adam Gilchrist, who owns the AGs. You don't become a massive company like that without doing good marketing. You just don't. I'm a marketing guy. I know this. Like, you just don't do that.
Especially when you've started a fitness empire almost exclusively.
Oh, sure.
On the back of great marketing.
Yeah, and that's what they've done. It's like it's a good thing they've done. They're doing a great job. And I think you ever talked about like what's going on this season. Well, so if you listen to Rugby Revealed, this is a great podcast. We'll throw a link up in ours. There are 2 great interviews, and they did a great job because they're going around to every Major League Rugby club and talking with the head coach and talking with the GM. The new GM, and it hasn't really been announced, just kind of like quiet behind the scenes. So Matt Burgess is not. I don't believe he's the full acting GM, because congratulations to him. I believe they're expecting their first child. He and his wife. So cool on that. Matt's a great guy. Like, really enjoyed meeting him last year. But Mike Sheehan, and it's not Sheehan, it's Sheehan because it's Irish. I know this because I listened to the other podcast. But he's come in and he's got extensive career in sports and entertainment, and like he's doing a fantastic job. And so he is kind of part of this driving force that's saying, let's change things up. Like, I've had the pleasure of meeting him. He's a great guy. He's got a lot, great ideas, and I think he's open to listening to the fans and what we want to do with the team. So I think that's another exciting thing that's really happening here in Austin. So, needless to say, like, there's a lot of great stuff going on, and people are now jealous. They're like, I guess I have to become an Austin fan now, like, because this is great. Like, and it's not just in the back office and at the stadium and things going on. Like, that's all great, but it's on the field too. It's like all the exciting things that are happening on the field, which we'll bring up like the last news, and I think we'll talk about it really quickly, and then we can elaborate more, in a future episode when we talk about the back line. But from the Dallas Jackals, I guess, debauchery that happened, or they've basically it's debauchery. I'll say it. From whatever happened up there was the supplemental draft, and the AGs got to select their pick, and they actually got, I believe they got first pick, which I didn't know. So they got first pick in that draft. I think they may have traded for it, or something happened. I don't know, because I thought the order was a little bit different. Like it was Giltinis and then Houston and then us, but who knows? But we got Connor Mooneyham, which is, again, really exciting because he, again, a solid player, from California, but lived in Houston. He was also the first overall pick in the MLR college draft. And so Dan Power said he's the only professional sports player in history to be selected number one in a draft in the same year by two different teams. Random sports trivia. But yeah, I mean, Alex, I don't know how much you've actually seen Connor play, but I've seen, highlight reels and stuff here, but he's an exciting player. He's 24, and so he's still got,
So he's actually the same year as me, school wise, and he played at Woodlands here in Texas, and I played at Westlake. So we played against each other a ton growing up, and I'll say undefeated against the Woodlands.
Man, look at that! Look at that shade that gets thrown out there by the Austinites.
No, Woodland, Westlake, we were kings there for a little bit. Still the only three-time back-to-back state champs in Texas, but Woodlands is now probably the top team in the nation for high school.
Really?
Connor was always one of their very best, if not their best player. Honestly, he was probably their best.
And again, Life University guy too, so he's
Yeah, he played with my brother.
Played with your brother, yeah. Who is?
Lauren actually hit him for the game-winning assist in the national championship against Cal in 2019, and Connor. It was not even probably Ryan's worst ever pass as a scrum half. Connor scooped it on the hop and scored it under pressure. It was pretty sweet.
That's awesome.
Yeah, he's an awesome. He really is a great player, and I think he's a guy that's just he's one of like the hardest guys out there. He's just physical, aggressive, hard-nosed player with some speed and some pretty good skills.
Yeah, and we can talk about it later. It's exciting. Coach Harris is like, listen, we're going to give him over to Mark Gerard in the back line. He can play 13. He can play 15. Two areas where we could use a little bit more depth at, which I think is great. But yeah, so lots of exciting news. I'm pretty as a fan, I was like, yeah, man, like we're ready for this. We're ready for it. There's been other things going on in the fandom of the Austin Gilgronis. Like, will we be called the Gilgroni-X?
Yeah.
we did a poll. We did a poll on that, and I will tell people we polled on Facebook and on Instagram, and we said, should AG fans be called the Gilgroni-X? This comes from Mr. Dan Power. Part of it comes from Dan Power and others, like as far as how do we define ourselves? I think it's great. I think it's hilarious. We'll play kind of like the Hulkamaniacs from the WWF. Yeah. And the final result, right, was something like 42 or was it 49 to 30 on combined Facebook and Instagram. So only 79 people voted. 5 people voted they didn't care. So we'll just take that.
Okay. My question though is, what about people that voted on Instagram and Facebook? Did you count both of their votes?
Yeah, some people voted twice. So voted on both. So
I did.
I think there were like 3 or 4 of them that did that. So there are like 3 or 4 people that voted like some on Instagram, some on Facebook. Not that many, so it's not that big of a deal. Anyway, sorry. So if listen, some people don't like it. What's that?
Let's be the Gilgroni-X.
Let's be it, man. Like, I'm for it. I think it's hilarious. I'm all for it. You saw the stuff I posted on social media recently with it.
Keep Austin weird.
Right? Exactly. Let's keep that up. Awesome, man. That's a ton of news right there. That's good stuff. We're not even talking about players. Hey, let's take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to sit down, and Alex picked it last week. We're going to talk loose forwards. Oh, man. Talent through and through on this one. You're listening and watching the Austin Rugby Podcast. All right, welcome back, Austin fans. We talked a lot. Like, that was fun. Like, I enjoyed talking about like all the great news that's going on in Austin. But what is Austin Rugby without the players? And we've gone through. So we started in the middle. Like, we started off with hookers because, you know, that's where you have to start all of your analysis is in hookers. The second round is we went down, just kind of working our way to the back, right? So hookers, second row, and now we've got loose forwards. So that's for those that are new to the game, those are your flankers and 8-man. It's your 6, 7, 8 on your team sheets. Man, I think. I'll tell you what, Alex. What do you think about our loose forwards? We'll ask you that because I want to hear your thoughts first before I continue to go crazy and kind of fanboy there a little bit.
I'm super excited for our loose forwards. I think, you know, I thought last year that was the unquestioned strength of our team. You know, last year I think it was pretty steady. It was Mo, Dom, and Lino, and then Potu was basically a loose forward playing lock.
Playing lock, yeah.
And, you know, obviously Potu's gone to play in the Pro 14.
It's
and
a zebra.
Which is pretty sweet.
It's a big squad.
Yeah, and then Lino is still unsigned, I believe.
Yeah. Just had a kid. I think they had a kid beginning of like the lockdown, like end of last year or something. So I know that he's back home in Hawaii.
But, you know, moving into 2021, it's like you wonder, like, how do you replace Potu and Lino? But then we've gone out and we've signed McLean Jones, and then, you know, we've already had pretty solid depth there in the first place. And I think that, you know, and then also I didn't even mention you have Dom Bailey coming back this year from injury. So
we've got.
What stands out to me is the sheer athleticism that we've got in the back row is got to be almost unparalleled across the league. If not for international experience, I think the combination of potential and athleticism is off the charts.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've got 4 returning loose forwards, right? So we've got Mo Abdominan, we've got Dom Aquina, Dominique Bailey, who, you know, we talked about is kind of in our re-signing episode, coming back, who was injured, you know, into last season, was slated to be back kind of middle of the season. And then we've got Michael DeWall, who was also injured and now coming back, Lyndon Wood graduate. Right. So, like, lots of excitement. And then, I mean, technically last season we had signed McLean Jones, but the visa stuff didn't go through, and then COVID hit, so obviously it didn't happen. The tie to McLean Jones is that he is a Warringah Rat. So he is part of that, the Coach Harris and, you know, Coach Gerard pipeline from Warringah. Who knows? Maybe we'll become a, like, sister team to Warringah, like Austin Gilgronis and Warringah Rats, like they'll just partner and be fan clubs together. So will we add more? I don't know. But yeah, let's dive into it. Like, let's talk about you know, I guess one of my favorites, like Mo Abdominan. Like, I think that he is, man, Mo is probably one of the best ball stealers and best jacklers in MLR, and I challenge anybody to prove me wrong. Like, I think the first season he came in 2019, the first 4 games he played, he stole the ball like 8 times or something like that. Some ridiculous number. And I think he scored a try in like his first match too. Like, talk about making an impact. I think that he's probably one of the best as far as jackling and ball stealing. I don't know. Like, what are your thoughts? How do you think? What does Mo bring to the table?
Well, I mean, you look at last year. I think that, you know, with the new coaches, like maybe last year, like the new coaches that we had last year, I think, you know, came in and they saw Mo was he's not a big guy at all. Like,
he's strong though.
Mo couldn't be more than 5'9" and
what is Mo?
215, 220 pounds. He's not a big dude.
Yeah.
So I think he doesn't necessarily pass the eye test, but he barely played the first 2 games of the year. And, we lost both of them pretty bad.
Yeah.
But he had come in that second game against New York, and as soon as he came in, we made a pretty big comeback. And then he started the last 3 games, tie against Utah, should have won that one. Really close loss to Old Glory, and then the win against Houston. And I think that his impact was huge because he's great tackler. I think that's a part of his game that gets overlooked.
Yeah.
He's a great tackler, and he's actually phenomenal in the clear out offensively, but then obviously his big difference makers, like you said, that I don't know that there's anybody in the league that jackals better than he does.
I mean, he had 5. He played 5 games. He didn't really play the first 2. Like, I don't think he got on maybe 10 minutes in the first match. Like, it wasn't a lot. Again, I don't remember him playing much, but he had 5. He still had 5 steals in 5 games. Like, that that's
barely played.
An incredible record. Yeah, and barely playing.
He barely played in the first 2.
Yeah, I think Mo is, man. I really think Mo needs he deserves at least a Canadian trial right now. Mo's Canadian.
He's just, like I said, he doesn't pass the eye test.
Yeah,
and you see that happen. Like you see, I mentioned him before on the show, but Sam Simmons over in England.
Yeah,
these guys that they don't have the typical, prototype size of their position, but they make a huge influence on the game. And Mo is one of those guys. And he's also, as a new guy on the team that was kind of, I was sort of on the fringe. I got to suit up for a couple games and play in one, but I was not one of the main guys, and it's a little intimidating coming in to a professional team, it's you're not one of the guys. And from day one, Mo, along with Zinzan as well, was really great about this. But they were just from day one, and Larome as well, but just made me feel really comfortable being a part of the squad. Yeah. Every morning you walk in, first guy to come say hi is Mo. Every time, it's just one of those, good team guys, good glue guy for the squad. I think he deserves a crack with Canada, and I really would love to see him get a lot of game time this year with the AGs. I think he's it's one of those guys that makes a difference. He doesn't necessarily get meters or the tries, but even if he's not coaching the ball, he's slowing down your breakdown.
Yeah, and I think you're right. Size for size, pound for pound, size, height for height. There are a few that are probably going to compete with him. He's small, but he's fierce. He's like a honey badger.
Yeah,
I mean, that's it is pretty evident when you watch him play. If you're watching and who he's tackling and how he's tackling, there are a few times where Mo needs a second hand or a second person in on a tackle. He has a ton of solo tackles. And it's that kind of defense, which, I think will play kind of a high line, fast pay up in your face style defense, given Coach Harris's, rugby league background. So I think that he's going to shine with that kind of style of play. Cause he wants to, he's like a little missile, man. He just flies in there and he will just take him out. Obviously athleticism is part of it. Dominique Bailey, we talked about it a couple weeks ago. Probably in 2019, there were a couple games. The game against NOLA, man, he was all over the place. The breakaway 60 meter, 55 meter try that he had that showed his pure pace, because he was outrunning the entire NOLA back line. He smoked them. Hurt, got injured in the kind of at the end of the season. If you talk to people within the organization, he's the one who's been building. They called him the foreman because he's the one who's been building the workout facility and painting and doing all the stuff there. But he's also been building his physique. And if you look on social media, Dominique Bailey he is gone off the rails as far as working out and getting physically fit. So for me, I'm excited to see what he can show this year.
Yeah, me too. Last year, I think like right when he got healthy enough to play, he was getting ready to start the last game of the season, and then got called off the week of.
Yeah.
So we didn't get to actually see him in his return post injury, but he came out and he trained with us in the fall when we were just doing kind of like a lot of just kind of mostly non-contact training.
Yeah.
But we did a lot of work with. We did do some work with jackling and breakdown, and he was just phenomenally good over the ball. And I haven't actually seen him in live contact, but like in person. But obviously, on his film from 2019 and just kind of knowing the pure speed and obviously like physical gifts that he has, they're pretty plain to see.
Sickening.
I'm really excited to see how he comes back. He's now had 2 years to recover from that knee injury.
Yeah.
And I've seen him do drills over the ball, and he's almost immovable once he's in position. So it's going to be exciting to see how he can parlay that with his physical gifts in open field once the season resumes.
Yeah, exactly. I definitely think that he definitely has the skill set and he's got the talent. That's for sure. Like, I think that he's, from a physical standpoint, again, athleticism. Speaking of athleticism, one of our a previous Dustin's Air interviewee, and probably the most athletic person in MLR. Very possibly. Dom Aquina. I mean, what else needs to be said about like the fact, like, his story is fantastic. Him coming down here, like barely scraping money to coming down to the combine, and then jumping out of the entire Round Rock multi-purpose complex on that first jump. We showed it in slow motion, and if you want to go back and watch that, go back and watch the Dom Aquina interview that I had. We actually showed Dom the slow motion of his first jump that he had never seen before. It is bananas.
What was his vertical? Like 40?
His first, it's like 38 and a half, like the first jump. Like,
that's, I mean, for reference, Kobe Bryant's vertical was 38, know?
So
that's crazy.
Yeah, there's that.
I remember last year, his first practice of the year with the AGs, it was just this cold morning out at the Round Rock multipurpose, and we were playing some sort of kind of like semi-contact, semi-touch game, and he was out on the wing because it hadn't been decided yet that he was going to be a forward, and he was out on the wing, and he was going up against one of the fastest guys in the team, Roderick Waters.
Yeah.
And granted, Roderick had a little bit of a hamstring issue going into practice, but was still Roderick's still one of the fastest guys, in MLR with the hamstring. And 2 times in a row, Dom just dusted him up the side. And when he did that, I was like, oh my God. If you're dusting Roderick Waters, hamstring injured or not, you've got some serious wheels. So I was like, whoa, this dude with the long hair, like, who is this?
Well, right. So we're at the combine, and we're clocking everybody. We're doing all the different events. In the video, there was a moment, like, after he did the high jump or the vertical test, he had to do his 40 meter, and I'm watching him. And I'm trying to, like, I'm a far distance away, and I'm trying to, like, run with him with my camera, to follow. And like, he smoked it, and I turned and I stopped recording, and I wish I'd kept recording, but I turned, and right to my right was Carlin Isles, and Carlin just goes, shit. You know, someone's fast. Like, if Carlin's saying, like, that guy's fast, he's fast.
Yeah.
So Dom Aquina, he's a forward too. I mean, last year, he had, again, as a 4.3 40, last year he had a 99.2% tackle completion rate.
Yeah,
that tells you a lot right there. Like, that's again, I think he was the line out target for sure. We talked about it before. It's crazy to have somebody like that. When you have somebody with a 38-inch vertical, if you get 2 tall guys to lift him, you'd never lose a line out.
Yeah.
Like, right?
Yeah.
Like, which is not common for a flank, like for a flanker, for a loose forward to be, always the line out lifted. Like usually, your second rowers are going to be there. But if you get two tall, like 6'8" second rowers lifting Dom Aquina, who's jumping out of the building,
I think minus some of the size, I think he really kind of reminds me of Artie Savia.
Yeah, I think we talked about that before. Like it's totally does. Yeah, he's like, I still think his size is still, he's not that much smaller than Artie.
Yeah. And he just he's one of those dudes that you make a really solid contact on him, and like you'll get a good shot, and like even like big guys will get a good shot on him, and it's like his legs just kind of keep driving and like little pistons.
Football mentality.
Yeah, and all of a sudden it's like he's just bursted out of the he's just pulled his legs up out of the tackle, and he's off and running, and like. Yeah. Go back and watch the AG's games last year. You'll see so many times guys will go to tackle him and they'll get a good shot, and then all of a sudden they'll just kind of they don't even just bump off; they just slide down to the field, and then he's gone. Yeah. It's like
he's definitely somebody that needs to have two people tackle him. Like
totally.
If you don't have somebody like a Mo who's going to put somebody down in one tackle, like you better have some backup pretty quickly, because if you don't, again, he had a couple offloads last year too that led to further progression of play and hitting the gain line a little bit harder. So with that, like, man,
I honestly think with some more like further development with his skills, I really genuinely think he could be a wing over in like the Pro 14 in the English Premiership. He's that athletic. He's that physical. I really think with some added skills that he's good enough to play at the highest professional level. And I think he's kind of going overlooked right now, but I'm telling you.
I think maybe he's not being overlooked because Dan Power and I were talking about this in a couple weeks ago. And Dom Aquina has USA Eagle written all over it. Like the sky's the limit for Dom. And it goes back to like he was a football player. Like he was a football player who just recently came over to the game. So it begs to the question. I know everything going on in Colorado with the COXO, like the crossover test that they're trying to do. Yeah. I mean, if you're an athlete that can jump 38 inches and has a 4.3 40, you could potentially play. Like, and you can't coach athleticism like that. And if you could coach him to play rugby, we'll see what happens. But you got to have athleticism first. So, anyway, I'll get off my soapbox on that one. I'm both for and against the crossover thing. So.
That's a conversation for another podcast.
Yeah, exactly. That's not our podcast. Continuing on, returners, Michael DeWall, Lindenwood grad. Again, when we talk about the first three guys, we talk about Mo, we talk about Dom, Dominique, and Dom Aquina, Dominique Bailey, Dom Aquina. It's athleticism. It's these bigger guys, or not bigger guys, but faster guys. High work rate, things like that. And then you get into Michael DeWall, who is kind of the beef of he's what I think he's more like the blindside guy. He's the one who's going to just make that one big hit, and he's going to hold people off rather than somebody who's going to break away quickly and take out your 10. I think Michael DeWall, again, he was injured last season, Lindenwood grad, so I think he's definitely got the skill. I just need to see him play. I just want to watch him play.
I've only ever seen him play for Lindenwood, and he's just one of those guys that you would consider a grafter. He just does the hard work. He's in a lot. He's in so many tackles. He's always around the breakdown, going for jackals, slowing down ball, creating turnovers and penalties. One of those guys. And, you and I have talked a few times now about, South African forwards they're big and aggressive. And he's a big, aggressive guy. I would still like to see him, do it at the professional level. I don't know, what he looks like at this level because he was injured last year. But Wesley White, his old teammate at Lindenwood, and now over with Exeter in England.
Actually, he's down at he's down with the sevens with the blitz box.
Okay, so he's moved, but still, Wesley White, super accomplished guy, had nothing but heaps of praise for Michael DeWall, and I just want to see him play. He's like 6'2" or 6'3"?
He is. Oh, I have it here. Michael is 6'3", 230.
That's pretty phenomenal size there.
It's a good size. I'll take 6'3", 230.
Yeah, he's got the measurables, and he's got the length and the brains for it. So,
and I think the good thing about like having 4 returning loose forwards is there's a cohesion and there's a way that how the other person's going to play. Last year, they lined up with the last game of the season. You had Lino at 8, and you had Dom Aquina at 6, and Mo at 7. I believe that's how they lined up, if I remember correctly. Which is good, so you know how they play. So adding Dominic Bailey in there, is a little more. You get that same athleticism like Mo. Actually, it's kind of funny because Dominic Bailey is like the mixture of Mo and Dom Aquina. Like they're all, if you blend them all together, like that's what you get. But it's great. And then of course you have the one re-signing, technical re-signing in McLean Jones. All right. So and McLean is again no small slouch. What is I just forgot, like he's 6'1", 225. And again from down from the Ring of Rats in the Shoot Shield, like he's coming in now. His preferred position is 8, so we'll see whether or not he plays 8 or what happens, or if there are other signings that have not been announced that play at the flanker positions and play at the 8 position, which would be, again, more depth is better. So I don't know, we'll see. What do you think?
I'm excited to see him. I've literally only seen his highlights, but he just seems like he's a very physical specimen.
I think he and if I were to define it, he and Michael are going to be like the bruising runners. Like they're going to be the ones who just power runners, whereas you're going to get more finesse and a combination of finesse and strength with, I know it sounds kind of ridiculous, but finesse and strength with Aquina and Bailey and Abdomina. I don't know. That's I think. All right, let's go for it. Let's call out who's your starting back row that first game of the season.
You touched on it already with the continuity, and I think you've got to keep Mo and Dom paired together at the flanks. I think that those two are they work well together, and they're both have so much. They offer different dynamic abilities, and so I think you can't not play either one of them. So I think those two, Dom at 6 and Mo at 7, and then I'm sticking McLean at 8.
Yeah, it's kind of ridiculous how often we agree on some of these. We're totally do that. Like, I wouldn't put it past throwing out a lineup of having Dominic Bailey at 6, Mo at 7, and Dom Aquina at 8, kind of taking that Artis Avila role, like going a little bit faster. It's the back line that we kind of had last year with the athleticism with Lino back there. So it's a little bit smaller, but a little bit faster. Especially with the size and strength of both our props and our second rows. Like, just we got a ton of power there anyway, so you may not need to have somebody like a big monster. And then again, we can throw Cam Dodson back in there too. We talked about that last week with him in the second row. Like, Cam can play 8 because that's what he played at GCU. That he's definitely a power runner, like a smash mouth power runner. Maybe not so much the one who's breaking away like Aquina will. But I think you could definitely throw in having Dom Aquina back there and having just playing smaller and faster in the back line or back row. Excuse me.
I agree.
Something to think about.
99.2% tackle rating. It's not like size is affecting his tackle.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Well, I mean, so we've got one more position and the forwards left to discuss. Next week we'll sit down and we'll talk the beef. The beef of the front of the forwards. We're gonna talk props, loose heads, tight heads, and man, just some big dudes. Like we got some big dudes in the front row. That's exciting. We got some big dudes and some new guys that are coming too. So that's awesome. Right after this, we're gonna sit down with our guest this week, USA Eagle and new gilgroni himself, Mr. Bryce Campbell. All this and more on the Austin Rugby Podcast. Stay tuned. All right, rugby fans, thanks for coming back and listening and watching on the Austin Rugby Podcast. So glad you could join us. As you know, the goal is to sit down and talk with players, coaches, hopefully the new GM for the Austin Gilgronis here soon, along with all kinds of people in the Austin Rugby community. Last week, we sat down with two great guys, Will McGee and Sebastian de Chavez. There is a very close connection between two of those, and that's going to be our next guest on the podcast. We're talking USA Eagle number 497. And of course, what we talked about was the worst kept secret in Major League Rugby history. And of course, that is Mr. Bryce Campbell. Bryce, what's going on, man? How you doing?
Hey, Dustin. Doing good. Thanks for having me on.
Good. Hey, we talked about it briefly beforehand, and what some people may not know, you are an IU grad, proud IU Hoosier, and I too am also the IU grad. So you got that nice connection there. Don't worry, people, we did not play together. Bryce is incredibly too young in comparison to my age to play together. I think I retired by the time he came out. But we really want to chat just about everything, Bryce. Like let's break it down. Let's talk about the journey that you've had going all the way up through IU Rugby into USA Eagles now.
Yeah, thanks. Sure. So I'll give you, I guess, my little story.
Tell us.
Grew up in Indianapolis.
Yeah, let's start off at the beginning and talk about you in Indianapolis and get into IU, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, cool. Yeah, grew up in Indy. Played football, basketball, baseball, growing up mostly, and I was very lucky to get involved in rugby at a pretty young age too. Started playing in middle school. Small club started up called Broadacre Rugby Club, and a couple of my buddies had cousins that played rugby in college, and that knew a little bit about the sport. And they say, "Hey, come out, play. You'll love it." The cool thing was where I played football, which was my favorite sport at the time. I was too heavy to run the ball. There was weight limits on people that could be running back, quarterback, wide receiver. So I played line. I was a lineman and a middle linebacker when I was that age, and then in high school I ended up playing middle linebacker. But in rugby, I could run the ball. I could play defense, offense, pass, kick, do it all, and that's just really what drew me into the sport.
I think that's every offensive. That's every offensive lineman and defensive lineman and any defensive player's dream. Like when they're like, "Oh, wait, rugby? Like I can do everything? Like I'm allowed to touch the ball?"
Exactly, because you're just so closed-minded when you're young. It's all you know. It's all
exactly
football. So didn't know there was anything else. So had some great coaches at a young age. Played for Royal Irish Rugby in high school. I went to Cathedral High School, and we were joined with Bishop Chatard High School for our rugby club. Our head coach, Scott Peterson, was a really big role model in my life. He was a pretty well-known rugby player in the area. He played on some select USA sides, but really was a big part of my development. And I'm blessed to have an older brother that's 2 years older than me that kicked the crap out of me growing up and also loved rugby. And he we played together in high school, and then he went down to IU. And towards the end of my high school, I started getting noticed by like the high school American setup and USA Rugby 8th grade stuff. And I was trying to figure out where I wanted to go to school. And my brother's like, "You're coming to IU."
You have no choice. You have to come.
it was the easy decision, great business school that I was lucky enough to get directed mid into Kelley School of Business, and the rugby program was coming up. We had had some success in the past, but never like really well known for the rugby nationally.
Yeah.
But we were good in the Big Ten, solid, and I wanted to be a part of that, and went down to IU, played under Sopa Inari, and he's from Samoa, lived a lot in New Zealand, has a really, really long rugby background, very knowledgeable, and he kind of opened my eyes up to be like, you could travel, and I know you're good enough to play longer than just college. He kind of believed in me to take that next step.
Yeah.
And one thing led to the next.
I mean, you kind of skipped one of those things too. Like you were awarded in 2017 like the Rudy Schultz Award. Like you were the best college rugby player at that time. So that's something you kind of skipped over. It's a little accolade I wanted to make sure that we could talk about for you. I don't know how you feel about tooting your own horn, but I figured I'd toot it for you there.
Thanks. Yeah. No, it's just like I was getting ready to go to play with the USA under-20s my freshman year at IU, and something happened. My mom was getting married, so I couldn't go on the tour because we're wedding.
Oh, well, come on, Mom.
Which I'll never hold it against her.
No.
But then I kind of fell out. I fell out of the short list of people on the age grade setup for whatever reason for the next couple of years. And then after my junior year, I got noticed after a few games. The CRC was really big, playing that in Philly, and I got chosen to play in a collegiate All-American tournament that was not a tournament, a tour of Australia.
Yeah.
So we went down to Sydney, played a couple games, and then went to Brisbane and played another game. And that kind of springboarded me into the USA setup.
Yeah.
I was skipping over other things too. During that summer, I did an internship in Sydney that was set up through the Kelley School of Business for Colliers International Commercial Real Estate Company in Sydney. And my coach at IU, Sopa Inari, he has family that live in Sydney, and his nephew played for Southern Districts Rugby Club in the Shute Shield.
Oh, yeah.
Which was just a short 30-minute train ride from where I was staying. So I played for Southern Districts for about 6-7 weeks, and then that ran right up to that collegiate All-American tour.
Yeah. What was it like to
kind
of
that sort of experience?
I'm sorry. I said, what was it like to kind of get that different experience to go basically, playing, collegiate rugby, which, in the US we're still then to go in playing, Shute Shield, like to get moving down to Sydney, playing down there for 6 weeks. What was the pace like as far as the speed of the game, the knowledge that they have, at a younger age than what we have? Because you're playing with, men now. How did you kind of take that, and how did you feel about playing at that particular time down there?
I just tried to soak it all in. The pace was the biggest thing that was different. Because even college rugby, like, guys are physical. You get really good athletes on the field and guys that can put shots on, but just the speed of the game is just on a different level.
Yeah.
And I wasn't even with the first grade. I went down there, and I knew I was only going to be there for 7-8 weeks, and I played fourth grade the first week. I played third grade the next week, and then I played fourth, third, second grade week after that. So I was able to get a lot of rugby in this short amount of time.
Yeah.
And I built some really, really cool relationships with some of the guys down there. And then, like I said, that springboarded me into the collegiate All-Americans. And I think that's what really prepared me to take that next step, was being in Sydney and playing with Southern Districts.
That's awesome.
And being exposed to the pace, and then collegiate All-Americans, and then kind of stepped all the way up.
And then, so, let's fast forward a little bit, after, was it, you graduated college in 2019? 17, sorry. See, I should have done my research. I thought it was 18 for some reason. But year after that, you go and, you're going to play with
Major League Rugby is just coming about, and you make your way out to I think did you move out to Glendale originally to play with the Merlins before MLR started, or were you kind of part of that group that moved in saying, "Hey, MLR starting, we're going to move out to Glendale and play with them"?
Yeah, so MLR was on the horizon. So when I got my first few caps with the Eagles, I was still at IU.
Okay.
So
I did not know that. That's awesome.
So I was during so that Collegiate All-American tour happened in the summer. A few weeks later, we started our fall semester at IU. I get a call. They want me to go play with USA Selects in Uruguay for the Pacific Rugby Challenge. I think that's what it was called.
Yeah, I guess it was. Something like one of those two. Yeah, I remember that.
And so I went down there. I was lucky enough that the teachers let me go for a few weeks and did pretty well there. And then right after that, I get back to Bloomington, get settled back in for a few weeks, and I get a call again. They want to bring me in with the USA Eagles to get ready to play the Maori All Blacks and then go to Europe for a few weeks. And I went back to my teachers and was like, "Hey, this is an unbelievable opportunity. This is my dream. Will you work with me?" sort of thing. And they were all on board.
That's awesome.
Did Skype calls and Zooms throughout the whole thing, and made a really good connection on my next tour during my spring semester, the ARC. Will McGee, and he kind of
Will McGee sounds familiar.
To go out to Denver, Glendale, play with the Merlins because Major League Rugby was getting ready to happen.
Yeah, so that's awesome. I mean, obviously, so in 2018, first year, you've already got your caps for USA Eagles. You've been collegiate player of the year. You're doing great things. MLR starts, and you're going out to Glendale. I mean, you guys had a great season that first season with at that time Glendale. I keep wanting to call them Colorado because that was the last name they were. Walk us through what it was like, being in that inaugural season, being in the inaugural championship match against Seattle, for the MLR Shield.
I loved it. I loved that season. We had a great team. Some really, really good players. A couple Eagles teammates, me, Will, Ben, Landry, Quilly, Sean, and a bunch of other guys.
Yeah.
Obviously, we thought we were gonna take it home. It didn't end up happening the way we wanted it to. But being on the ground level of Major League Rugby was just so special. Playing in the first match was against Austin.
Yeah, I remember that match.
Glendale.
And it's a lot of snow.
Being able to say, I played in the first Major League Rugby match in the U.S. was pretty special.
Yeah, that is pretty cool. I remember that the whole announcement that CBS Sports was going to cover it, and I think it was a great kickoff to this league. That we continue to follow now. And that's pretty. I remember the Austin game was a great game. Like it was a hard fought battle. You guys came out on top, I believe, on that one. But still not.
Yeah. Do you remember what happened at the end?
I remember what happened.
They had 2 red cards and a yellow card.
That's right. There was
a game with 12 players.
Yeah, I do remember. Like that was really weird. Because I think that game, or there's one other game that has the most red cards and yellow cards in a match, but I think that one is like tied for the most, and so it was not the prettiest of games.
No, it wasn't.
No, that's not the games. So obviously, in 2018, you do well. And then, a big call comes along, right? You get called up by London Irish, who at that time I believe were in the Rugby Championship. And had they been promoted that year, or were they getting ready to be promoted into the Premiership?
They were in the Premiership, and they were bottom of the table.
They bottom of the table.
When they told me there's about a 50-50 shot whether they would stay up or not stay up.
Yeah.
But yeah, for me that didn't really matter.
Well, but then you were a part of London Irish. I mean they've done quite well, and you kind of went over there and played with them for a couple of years. And what was that like? Again, we're talking about the difference from going playing at IU and going to play shoot shield, and then playing MLR, and then going over and playing the rugby championship and premiership. Like, what was that change in pace for you all as well?
Oh, like just going to England was so cool for me because the amount of experience that all the guys had, that I was going in to train with every single day, just made me so much better and made me have a different outlook on the game. Because every guy in the whole team has this skill set that they've been playing since they could walk, and just learning things every day and training from those guys. So it's incredible.
That's awesome. And I guess what was we talked with Sebastian, last week about it, and kind of talking with him and saying you live right down the road from him. Was he somebody that right off the bat you kind of clicked with, or was it just kind of like, oh, he's in the forwards, don't worry about him, I'm gonna stay back here in the backs? You kind of separated it that way.
No, I think we clicked straight away. I remember I just landed in London, and our manager gave my number. A few of the guys, one of my buddies, Tommy Bell, reached out. He's playing in France now in Pro D2, but he reached out and was like, "Hey, I'm Tommy. Nice to meet you. I'll come pick you up. We're going to go over to Seb's house, and he's doing a little barbecue." So literally the day I landed,
he's South African. It's a braai, man.
Yeah,
he's gonna call you out on that.
The day I landed, went over to Seb's and we clicked straight away. It's just such a kind man. Like, went so far out of his way to make sure I was welcome into the team. Yeah, and just so lucky.
That's awesome.
Lucky he was there when I went over.
Yeah, and then I know time playing over in England is great, but I also want to talk a little bit about your time playing in the World Cup and scoring a try in the World Cup. Walk me through that. Tell me what it's like because there's guys that get to play at the highest level, and there's guys that get to play for national teams, and there's guys that get the opportunity to play at a World Cup. Just one play game, but to have quite a few matches in a World Cup, in the last World Cup, 4 matches. What's it like to score in a World Cup match? Because there's not that many people that get to do that.
At the time, it didn't feel any different than any other try you score, but then afterwards you kind of realize how special that is and how lucky you are to have done that and how many things had to fall in place for that to happen.
Yeah.
And just so appreciative of the journey. It was a funny try. It was so good to get that because time was over. We obviously didn't have the performance we wanted, and they could have just kicked the ball out. And I think it was good to get something out of that game to say, "Screw you, we can play too." And I think almost every guy touched the ball before I scored that try. It was the longest play of all time.
It's unbelievable. And, I don't know how many
at the end of it. It was a wild passage.
Yeah, it was pretty. It was good. Go watch it on YouTube. Maybe we can find a link to it and we'll post it on the page or something. Because I think people need to see it because it was a great try. Like you said, everybody touched the ball. It seemed like it. But yeah, that's good. So let's kind of take a step up into where we're at. This time last year. Getting ready to. The season's closed down for pandemic. Did you know that you wanted to come back to MLR around this time last year before pandemic, or was this something that it was pandemic related that kind of drove you to say, hey, maybe we should go back to MLR? And was it Will McGee that said, hey, come over, I want to play with you again?
I think it was a little bit of all of it. I was, before the pandemic had hit, I was pretty sure I was going to stay at Irish.
Yeah.
And when everything started to shut down, things just started to change a bit. The club's funding was different. Other opportunities came and went, and Will got in touch with me. So that was on the back of my mind.
Yeah.
And I just thought it was a really good time to head back to the U.S. Just because of the way the pandemic went.
Yeah.
There was so much uncertainty. And then with my visa as well, I couldn't wait around because I was going to have to go home.
They're going to kick you out.
It was getting ready to run up.
Yeah.
But I thought it was the perfect time for me to come back to the U.S. The league's growing. And, I want to inspire young Americans to play the game.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's a better place other than on the national team, but a better place to be than in our domestic competition playing here.
It's a great thing you say that, because I think, Coach Harris in the write-up about you when we officially announced that you joined the team, even though, as we said, worst kept secret in MLR about you joining because Ohio Aviators let it slip by maybe not on purpose, but by accident they let it slip. But so did other people. He talked about that he sees you as the leader, a face of American rugby moving forward. It's a pretty high accolade to say, you becoming the face of American rugby. How do you take that, and then how do you kind of inspire? You said to inspire the youth to play the sport in the domestic league. How do you change your own outlook to be one now of that leadership role? You said you were the younger guy on the team for the USA Eagles, then you're the American. Now you are one of the leaders. You're one of the most experienced players in the organization here in Austin. So what's been the mindset change for you in the past couple of years, past 4 months now?
That's a lot to live up to. Look, I just want to be the best teammate, best person I can be.
Yeah.
If I try to overthink it, then there's no point. As long as I show up every day with the best intentions to work my hardest, to help the younger guys on the team, to get involved with the community, then that's all I can do. And I just want to show, young kids in America that rugby can be a pathway in your life, and it can teach you many great life skills, can teach you about different cultures, can take you around the world, whether you're an elite player or not. If you decide you want to go spend, 2 months in Europe, you could go find a rugby club and you instantly have, 20, 30 friends.
Yeah.
To do the same in several other areas around the world. And I just want to expose young kids to see rugby as an option in their life.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think it's a great thing, and I look forward to kind of seeing how that progresses for you. Looking at your career trajectory and how it's been very high, and to continue that growth. And I think it's important to have more and more people who can be projected on the national scene as the leaders of the faces of rugby right now. I think that it's slowly growing, and hopefully soon we get more recognition by major sports outlets like ESPN, things like that. But I do think there's something that a person like yourself going out and saying, "Hey, this is what we want to do by building rugby in the community for the youth," which I think is incredibly important. What I want to ask now is, you're about a week into training or so with, now that everybody's in town, how have things been going? What is it like, training? I don't know the whole structure of but we know there's like bubble training or, pod group training, whatever it's like. Tell me what it's like to manage that in a pandemic, and trying to train, as an organization, as a team. How's that been working for y'all?
Everyone's just so excited.
Yeah.
Because we've been locked up for so long, and to get out and throw the ball around and be able to actually train and do what we do is just so amazing. Obviously, we don't have the full resources to do a legitimate bubble.
Yeah.
but
we don't have the money at the NBA.
Yeah. So we have to sit down and be really serious about what our black and whites are, like what we can do, what we can't do.
Yeah.
We know Austin's a fairly open city compared to others in terms of what's going on with COVID right now. You can still, live your life and go out, go to a restaurant, get dinner. You can still do things. And unfortunately, we just have to buckle down and stay away from things like that, because it can jeopardize our season if someone tests positive, or a handful of people test positive in the middle of the season.
Yeah.
So we just kind of have to hold ourselves to a higher standard for the time being until something happens. Either we all get a vaccine, or just gets dealt with in another way. So we just have to take it, day by day, week by week, and do all that we can to mitigate the risk.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, everyone's dealing with it, and I'm sure for you guys it's even harder, because you want to practice as a full squad. You want to get things. You got to be extra careful about what you're doing, where you're going, and who you're seeing, and who you're coming in touch with, in contact with, and things like that. I can't even. I have a hard time doing it, and I don't have 20 something other people that I'm around on a regular basis, so I can't imagine. Kind of wrap things up. Kind of a couple interesting questions I want to ask you. So Will McGee contacts you. You come here. You get in touch with Seb, who then comes here. Who's Seb going to get in contact to come here next to play with us? Who's your pick? Who do you think is going to? Who is his connection that's going to come here? Is it going to be a London Irish connection or a South African connection?
I don't know. The list is endless.
Yeah.
Seb's got a lot of connections.
Yeah, exactly.
We've all got a lot of connections. So you say somebody, it could happen.
You never know. We'll keep the ear to the ground on that one. Also, kind of wanted to ask you, now that we're getting the season, the team is filling out quite well. Today, the day we record, is Wednesday. Connor Mooneyham just got announced as the signing from the Jackals. It's pretty exciting. Plays out on the wing. As far as I filled out my slots on my imaginary game day roster, we have kind of a gap at 13 right now, and I'm kind of curious who you want to see, because I have you at 12. That's okay. That's where I project you're going in at. Who would you like to see out at 13? Do you want Frank Halai outside of you, or is it somebody else?
Look, we'll let the coaches decide. We've got a handful of guys that can slot in. I'm happy at 12 or 13. So we'll see. It's all about what.
I said, do you have a preference?
It's not a combination. It's more on the style, because some teams have their 12 as more of a playmaker, less of a strike runner. Some have their 13 as that role.
Yeah.
So it just depends on what the game plan is and what our attacking style is, and I'm happy to defend either way. If I was to say my all-in-all preference, probably 12, but it's
we know Coach Gerard and Coach Harris are avid listeners, so they're listening. So just let you know, like you just told them you want to play 12. That's it. Yeah, that's good. Really, last thing, I do want to congratulate you, because a big thing did happen during COVID, during the off season. For those that don't know, Bryce, you want to tell everybody what great life event just happened to you?
I am engaged. I have a fiance.
Congratulations, sir.
Thank you. Yeah, getting ready. Weddings in December, so hopefully we're all good with the COVID stuff by then. Fingers crossed.
Yeah,
but yeah,
that'll be good. We've been asking the guys, everybody about what's their outlook for the season, what do they want to do. Everybody wants to lift the shield. I think that's always a great thing. Everybody wants to say they want to do that. Obviously, you guys thought you had the team in Glendale in season 1 to pull it out. I know that this team around you, everybody that's been signed, everybody that has been announced and unannounced, there's a lot of incredible talents, top to bottom, on this organization. What do you think the biggest challenge is going to be for you guys this year I'll ask that one. I'll ask the opposite of like, what are you looking forward to? What do you think is going to be your biggest challenge as an organization and as a team to lift the shield this year?
I think right now the biggest challenge is going to be dealing with the pandemic and making sure that we don't have an outbreak at the wrong time or ever really.
Yeah.
And making sure that we're all able to train week in, week out together. I think that we've done a really good job, even though we haven't been together much yet, of laying the foundation for a culture here.
Yeah.
Everyone seems to be fully on board and really open to what Sam and Mark have to say and what the leaders in the team have to say. And we're just excited to get to work. And yeah, I think we're going to have a really special team here.
Yeah.
You can tell from the team sheet and you can tell from the vibe. It's really good.
The vibe is, having been here since season one, been part of fans since season one and seen the team change. Man, the vibe this year is something completely different. The fan vibe, the team vibe, the player vibe, like just talking to you all week in and week out, it's exciting. And you can just see that there's there's more fire in the eyes than in previous seasons. There's always fire, but there's just something different this year. And so I'm excited for it. I know the rest of the fans are, and we're excited to watch you get out there and play. To lace up in the bright orange, new gear, as you can see. Will showed some off last week. These are the new training tops. I know, man. Maybe give me some of those. Those are slick. So, hey, Bryce, we really appreciate you coming on, man. Looking forward to chatting with you. Hopefully later on in the season, talk about how things are going. Hopefully that we get off to a great start in week one now, and we can kind of get rocking and rolling. We're counting down the days. Almost like 30-something days left, I think now. So
it's coming up.
It's coming up. Everybody, USA Eagle and Austin Gilgroni, number 12, inside center. Hey, Coach. Bryce Campbell. Bryce, thanks for coming on. We appreciate it.
No, thanks so much for having me. And looking forward to meeting all the fans. Really appreciate it.
Definitely. Have a good one, sir.
Yeah, me too. Cheers.
All right, Dustin, good chat there with Bryce Campbell. Can't wait to bring maybe the new Captain America down to the state.
Ooh, Captain
America.
Blaine
Scully was our old Captain America, but I think
wasn't Todd Clever the Captain America before that one though? I don't know, Todd.
Blaine Scully, and now we got. I think Bryce Campbell might be the next guy.
I think he could be too. I don't know. Will may have something to say with that. He may want to fight him for it, but I think Bryce could be the face of USA Rugby moving forward for sure.
Yeah, I think that I've heard in some circles people are tipping him to be the next captain for the US. So
I can see that.
How cool is that to have a guy like that down here in Texas?
I mean, and we just talked about it too. Like his leadership role that he's taken on is pretty exciting. Like he's now he sees himself as that leader. So yeah. Looking forward to it. Can't wait.
I mean, he's his American rugby dream as it gets. Just born and raised up in the Midwest, and went to University of Indiana. Collegiate All-American, and then USA U20s and MLR and just
Premiership.
Yeah, and then made it over to England and played in the Premiership. It's like he showed that you can do it as an American. So
yeah, awesome.
All of us are super excited for Bryce Campbell to come to come to Texas. But we're equally, maybe not equally, but we are also excited about round 2 of the Six Nations coming up this weekend.
We didn't talk about it last week at all. We should have just. We could have at least touched upon it, because it's the only big. It's only big rugby going on right now. So.
But with one less interview this week, we got a little extra time to talk Six Nations. Dustin, you and I are going to make a few predictions here,
Italy's winning it all. Not a bet.
Winning what?
Not a betting man. The golden's the wooden spoon. That's what Italy's winning.
Yeah, again
for
the last Six Nations game they won was in 2015.
Was it 2015 or 2014?
No, it was 2015. But that's I
right.
think they're 28 in a row defeats. Like I think that
get them out. Sorry. Okay. Anyway,
we're getting close to sounding the bell for Italy to step
the 10 count. All right.
Yes, Italy. They'll be taking on England this weekend. Scotland coming off that big win over England. They're going to host Wales, although hosting doesn't really mean a whole lot these days because of fans. But Scotland hosting Wales at Murrayfield, and then Ireland taking on France in the third game this weekend. So, Dustin, looking ahead, round 2, Six Nations. We'll just start it off. England, Italy. I know you've got a hot take here.
Hot take, everybody. Like, I think the odds-on favorite to win by maybe 60 is probably going to be England. I don't know. I tell you what, it depends on what England team shows up. Is it going to be the England team that kicks the ball away every third time they touch it, or whether or not they're going to kick it over after every second pass? They're like, yeah, let's just kick it 50 meters down the field and just run after it and see what happens. I don't know. England was poor.
Justin, is that what happens when you get relegated to the championship?
Oh man, Sari's getting thrown under the bus there a little bit. There.
Did Owen Farrell complete more than 5 passes last weekend?
I don't think so. Somebody they gave us a scoring, like a player rating, and they said Mario Itoje was a 7. And I was like, what kind of junk were you on calling Mario? Like, he basically had 5 penalties that resulted.
I was going to say, I think the only 7 Mario Itoje recorded was in the penalty count.
Yeah, right. I don't know. I mean, England, Italy, like, England's going to win. Like, it's Italy, like, they had like 2 glimmers of hope, and I don't know. England's just gonna. Italy's just poor. It's unfortunate. Like, I'm ready to see Georgia or somebody else, like another European championship or European national club play. I'm ready for somebody else just to get in there.
Yeah, likewise. I mean, at least someone else to get a chance.
Yeah.
Like
you said,
I think at some point you lose that kind of willing suspension of disbelief that, like, maybe this is Italy's year. They've got this guy that's very well for Gloucester.
Like the Cleveland Browns of. As a Cleveland Browns fan, like, maybe this year. I don't know. Right. England for sure on that one. That's all credit to Scotland though. Like, on that win, like, they played fantastic. Like, they played a flawless. Yeah. They played a flawless game.
According to Eddie Jones, England came into that game looking ahead to the new law changes that are going to be taking place in the rugby, and so they weren't.
Leave Eddie Jones to make an excuse.
Right, they weren't playing the right game plan for the game. For European rugby in 2021, according to Eddie Jones.
So they're playing for European rugby in 2023.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why they're kicking it away.
Yeah, right. All right. Yep, I got England. Who you got?
Yeah, England. England had a very disappointing showing last weekend, but I think that that was a lot of those like those series players. That was their first game in I think like 3 months or 4 months.
Yep. It's crazy.
I think they'll come back. They'll win. I don't think they're going to win as convincingly as they would in the past. I would say it'll be something more like a 34-3, 34-9 kind of game.
I'm gonna give Italy. I bet they score 14 at least.
Maybe.
I'm thinking about it. Okay. Anyway,
I don't know.
Who's the second game?
So we talked about Scotland took England down last weekend. We'll see if we can double up this week against Wales. This would be, if they can beat Wales on Saturday, then that would be their first back-to-back win streak against Wales since 2003.
Yeah.
And their first I want to say their first ever 2-0 start in the Six Nations, and then of course the
Sounds
Six
about right.
Nations started in like 1999. Five Nations ended.
I don't know. I don't know. Somewhere around there, late 90s.
But yeah, bottom line is that Scotland has never started well in the Six Nations. They've never done that well against Wales. They've got a huge opportunity to tick off 2 unchecked boxes here on Sunday, and I think they are favored over the weekend. But I'm not sold. I'm not sold. I think. Yeah, I think Wales generally has Scotland's number.
Yeah, they have. They have.
I understand that Wales played a 14-man Ireland team this past weekend, but I think that they have restored a little bit of confidence into the jersey, despite head coach Pivac's struggles over the last year. I think Wales is about to start finding a little bit of a rhythm despite the injuries, and I think that they nip Scotland, and I think Wales moves to 2-0, and I think they do it with a score of 20-17.
Yeah, that's a good one. What's the weather forecast for Scotland on Sunday? Probably terrible, right? Cold and be like it is here. Actually, I'm gonna go against you on this one. I think the way that Scotland is playing right now, I think that they're going to pull it out, and I think we're gonna look at something more like a 20. Man, it's fried for this one. We'll go like 24-14, 24-17 somewhere. I don't know. I just have a feeling like Scotland is just playing. They're playing good. Like they played good. If they played the same ball that they played, like I'd say like Wales barely beat. I guess they barely beat because they did not play well against Ireland, and Ireland had 14 men. So I think that Scotland's gonna do it. They're gonna break it. This is the year for Scotland. I don't know why. Well, at least the year for Scotland to beat Wales and England back to back.
What do they call it? The wall between, is it Hadrian's Wall? Is the wall between England and Scotland?
I'll say yes because I don't remember.
I think it's Hadrian's Wall. Scotland has kind of put up a bit of a defensive wall of their own on the rugby team as well.
Their tackling was through the roof on Saturday.
Yeah, and I read that they've gone 6 straight Six Nations games holding opponents under 20 points, which I think
I'm saying. So it's like 14-17. That's why I think Wales is going to score.
No. But I think Wales gets to 20 points. I think they win 20-7.
I'd say if they get past 17 points, then Wales wins, right? All right. Big one on Sunday.
Yep, and then that brings us to the game of the weekend.
Yeah, for sure. Probably. Well, I don't know. I don't know.
One of the games of the tournament.
Scotland Wales is maybe. I don't know. I think it could be the game of the weekend. I don't know. I think the next one. Sorry, I kind of took over there.
A hopefully 15-man Ireland.
Yeah, playing against a 15-man, but sometimes seems like 16-man with DuPont on the field.
He counts as 2. I mean, I've been saying it for a couple years now that
best 9 in the world right now.
Best 9 in the world. I think best team in the world. Yeah. Personally, I think France. I think France is going to win the Six Nations. I think they're going to win the Grand Slam as well.
Yeah.
Only they didn't win it last year was because they had a stupid red card against Scotland that cost them the tournament, which is
ridiculous.
Something you always have to factor in, though.
With France.
Dumb French error.
Dumb French errors and stupid penalties. I think if DuPont plays the same way that he played, I mean, which you can only expect, I think France is going to win the game pretty easily.
Yeah, I think, and also I think the big news for Ireland is Johnny Sexton's out. So they have not proven in the past 4 years to have a reliable backup to Johnny Sexton, and it's crazy to think though that our own AJ McGinty, had he never capped for the U.S.,
would be playing for Ireland.
Guy. But would he have, if he hadn't have been a U.S. Eagle, would he have ever made it over to the Pro 14 and then
on the Premiership? I don't know.
All right. We don't know, but
I don't know the score of that game. By the way, it's going to be. I think it's going to be a high scoring game.
So 31. I'm going to go 31-20 France.
34-24 France.
Ooh, nice.
It's gonna be some fireworks. So. All right, there we go.
Great. Here, Dustin.
Austin Rugby Podcast, Six Nation predictions that no one's gonna care about. Cool. Hey, it's another fun week. Good stuff. Lots of fun. Lots of news. Lots of player coverages. Really enjoyed sitting down with Bryce Campbell as we talked about. As always, tune in for your latest Six Nations information to the Austin Rugby Podcast. You never know, man. We got to talk some rugby here. But we really enjoy it. Follow us on social media, Austin Rugby Supporters, on Facebook and on Instagram. Start using that hashtag gilgroniacs. We'll put it right down here in the bottom. Gilgroniacs. No, it's always good. Really appreciate everybody listening. It's nice to do this. It's fun for Alex and I to do this every week and come back and just talk some rugby. Don't forget, like and subscribe to the channel. Follow us on wherever you get all of your podcasts. We really want to continue to get that growth because we got to get Joe Rogan to continue to follow us. Continue to follow us. Yeah, right, Dustin. Hey, you're listening to the Austin Rugby Podcast. That's Alex Reese. I'm Dustin Zare. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you on the pitch.